was a person whose only job was to hold a laurel wreath over the head of the Caesar and from time to time intone the words, "Thou art mortal." Now the purpose of this was to remind the man in whom such great powers resided that he too was, after all, only a man, and as such, mortal. When we're young, we tend to think of life as never-ending. Time for us stretches off limitlessly into the future. But as we get older, even in our 40s, which should be a time of vigor, interest, and activity, really a time of young maturity, we begin to get from time to time small reminders of our mortality, or it might be a sudden shortness of breath, or a perfectly normal twinge in the chest, a bit of back trouble. But we get these occasional reminders that time is not, after all, standing still for us, that we, like the Caesars of old, are indeed mortal. To the neurotic, this sort of reminder fills him with dread and plunges him into even deeper depression. But to the fairly normal, reasonably well-adjusted person, this comes as a reminder to enjoy to the fullest the time that is remaining, that days are not things to be waited through until Saturday or a birthday or Christmas, but rather to be savored and enjoyed one by one, hour by hour. We come to an understanding that to kill time, as we so aptly put it, is really nothing more than to kill a little part of ourselves, since time is all we have. It reminds us too, or at least it should, to be more patient, more tolerant of others, particularly those we love. If we're mature enough to love anyone, it means exactly that. And it reminds us to follow our hunches and obey our sudden impulses, especially those which involve a kind word or a pat on the back or a sign of tenderness. Those we love, as well as ourselves, are only passengers for the journey's duration, so let's let them know we enjoy sharing it with them. And if we don't always enjoy it, let's fake it. Let's pretend we do. After all, the trip really isn't all that long. I saw a newspaper picture not long ago of a woman of 75 ice skating. It reminded me that 75 is only old to people under 60. To people 75, it's a good, thoroughly enjoyable age, and maybe we'll all live to be 85 or 95, and maybe we won't. In any case, there is a limit, and there should be, or it wouldn't be there. And since there is, why not relax a little? Not take things too seriously. And as an old friend of mine once said, in a life where death is inevitable, never worry about anything. Sure, it's easier said than done. I remember reading a story about an old man who was planting a young tree in his yard. His neighbor hailed him and said, "What are you planting the tree for? You'll never live to see it grown." And the old man calmly went on with his planting and said, "I believe you have to plan on dying tomorrow or living forever." Well, I'm not planning on dying tomorrow. George Santayana once wrote that there's no cure for birth and death save to enjoy the interval. There's no cure for birth and death save to enjoy the interval. You know, it's being reminded of something like that which can shake a person up a little bit. Have you ever thought much about how much time we waste and unhappiness we bring on ourselves by worrying about the future and reliving in our minds the mistakes of the past? One of the neatest tricks in the world is to learn to enjoy the present, since the present is the only time we'll ever own. Distance is no longer a serious obstacle due to modern means of travel, but time remains unconquerable. It cannot be expanded, accumulated, mortgaged, hastened, or retarded. It's the one thing completely beyond man's control. And while the supply of time is certainly limited for anyone, generally it's squandered as though there's no end to it. The man on the commuter train, bored, waiting to get home, then waiting for dinner, then waiting to go to bed or for a particular television program, and he thus spends his time slightly behind reality, waiting for something that's coming up. And while it'll keep him going, he never or seldom learns to enjoy the time he's using right now. But what it takes seems to be an awareness of living. It means being aware that you're alive at this moment, and that the world and people are interesting enough at any time, so that we needn't waste so precious a thing as time in boredom. If we know where we're going in the future, we can do our work the best we can, give it everything we've got, and we don't need to worry about it or the future. And as for reliving our mistakes of the past, this is the easiest advice on earth to give, and probably the most difficult on earth to follow. Everybody knows that it's perfectly useless to relive in our minds the dumb stunts we've pulled in the past, but this doesn't keep us from doing it. And again, according to the experts, the solution may be found in living for the present and enjoying it as much as we can. Now, this does not mean that we should not plan for the future. We should. But once our plans are laid, fine. Work on them, but don't stew and fret over them. All we will ever have is today. Yesterday is gone forever, can never be recalled, and tomorrow really never comes. If we find it difficult to enjoy the day in which we're living, we should remember that what we're waiting for will be made up of the same kind of days we're getting now. Frequently, a person who's unhappy by nature will believe that when something happens in the future, such as marriage, a better job, more money, or whatever it happens to be, that he'll suddenly be a happy person. But the facts don't bear that out. If we're living in the past, or worrying, or hoping for happiness in the future, the best thing we can do is ask ourselves, how am I doing with the days I'm getting right now? How am I doing today? It's not how much we have, but how much we enjoy that makes happiness. Try that business of being aware of the present and its possibilities, and the chances are you'll enjoy it. The head of a great corporation died in his New York office of a heart attack. Later, when it came time to clean out his desk and collect his personal effects, a hand fishing line wrapped on a stick, complete with bobber, sinker, and rusted hook, was found in his bottom desk drawer. It was probably the one he had used as a small boy on the farm in the Middle West. Had that relic of younger carefree days represented his real dream of what living was all about? He had gone to school, found a job, got married, worked hard, purchased a home on the installment plan and the other niceties of living. Children had come along, and there was their education to think about. There were the promotions that came from hard work and native ability and the passing of the years. There were the clubs and civic things, the professional associations, the crises on the job and at home. And finally, the top job with a company that had grown very much larger with the passing of 30 years. The top job with its responsibilities to stockholders, employees, customers, research and development, finance. The kids were out of school and married themselves now. It had all happened so fast and with no real plan of any kind. It had been school, then job, then work, then promotions and family and income problems, and suddenly there he was on top of the pile. And rummaging in his things in the attic or the basement one day, he had come across that old worn-out fishing outfit with its tiny hook for bluegills and the red bobber with the paint all peeled off. The string had almost come apart in his hands, and he'd sat there and remembered that cool little creek with the summer smell of it and the green moss along the bank, the frogs plopping into the water and the water bugs skimming in the willows along the bank. He remembered the excitement of seeing that bobber suddenly disappear and the frantic tug of the fish on the line, and finally a nice string of them for dinner. And suddenly, he'd wanted to go back. He'd realized that that had been living, that had been real and elemental and satisfying, and somehow he hadn't done enough of it. He hadn't had the time to just go sit on a bank and fish for a while and chew on a twig and feel the sun on his back and wait for the bobber to disappear. The time and the leisure to listen to the voice inside and get things straightened out in his mind as to what was important and what wasn't. Things like goals and roles. So someone had called him, and he'd put the fishing outfit in his jacket pocket, and he'd thought about the next morning, too, when he took the outfit to his office and looked at it again, and then finally put it down in that bottom drawer, tucked away, out of sight, but not out of mind. And then there'd been the coronary, and that had been the end of that. The fishing outfit was still in the bottom drawer, and when his wife went through the effects that they had sent home from the office, she sat with the fishing outfit in her hands for a long time. She saw him as a little boy, too, and maybe wondered why he'd followed the course he'd chosen. In interviews with very old people who realize that their remaining time is drawing to a close, you frequently hear them say, "I waited too long to start living." When the researchers or others who hear this kind of response are young, they find it strange. But what these older people mean is that they often fail to enjoy life even during the years that they were living it most fully. And it seems that most people, during the richest and fullest years of their lives, fail to develop an awareness of living, an enjoyment of living. It's like the person who puts the best china and silver and linen away for some future time, or very special time, and dies before any of it's ever used. Or it's like the person who puts seat covers in his car and thus passes on to the second person to buy it brand new upholstery that he himself never used or enjoyed. And so millions of people with the miracle of sight never really see the world about them until it's practically too late. Millions with the inborn capacity to love and to know the joy that loving brings wait too long to express it. They live through the passing years without really being aware of their days, of the riches that are passing through their hands. Few people, it seems, develop an awareness of daily living. In possession of the miracle of life, they pass through their days like automatons. In possession of the greatest gift on earth, life itself. They tell us by their actions that they don't even know they have it, and haven't the slightest conception of its value, let alone an awareness that it's to be enjoyed to the fullest every day. I remember reading an account of a famous show business personality, a woman of great talent, who, as she made the announcement of her impending fourth or fifth marriage, said, "After all these years, I'm finally going to be happy." She thought another husband could somehow give her something she should have been enjoying all along. She obviously had no idea as to what happiness is, where it's to be found, or what living is all about, and she belongs to a big club. It's only when life is threatened that a conception of its value begins to dawn on the average person. A man plotted a kidnapping for months. His mind was filled with the thought of the $1 million ransom he was going to get, more important to him, he thought at the time, than anything else on earth. Yet when he was surprised by the police, he dropped the suitcase containing the ransom and ran for dear life. Ran for dear life. It took the sudden threat of death to put things in their proper order for this poor, stupid person. It's amazing, isn't it, how few people seem to get the word. Most people place the greatest value on the cheapest things in life, while the greatest of all, life itself, goes unnoticed. The most fortunate people in the world are those who have the wisdom to place value where it belongs, those who have an awareness of life. I read a great Greek poem once by Kafafi titled, I believe it was titled, Journey to Ithaca, something like that, which reminds us that it is the voyage and the adventures on the way that count, not the arrival itself. This seems to be the most difficult truth to understand. This is not to say that a man's goal in life is unimportant. On the contrary, it's vital, for without a goal, a distant destination, we would not begin the trip at all. Instead of an odyssey, we'd have a running around in circles, an endless following of the shoreline around and around our tiny island. Every man needs a great and distant goal toward which to strive, but in traveling toward it, he should try to keep in mind that the fabled land he seeks has shores much like the one he left behind, that its purpose is not so much a resting place, but rather the reason for the trip. Where a person goes is not nearly as important as how he gets there. That a house is built is not important. It's the manner in which it's built that makes it great, poor, or average. That we live is not nearly as important as the manner in which we live. I think it's in misunderstanding this that often keeps people in a state of unhappiness and anxiety. They forget what they're really looking for, or what they really should be looking for, the discovery of themselves. This is the island toward which everyone should journey. It's a difficult journey, beset like the travels of Ulysses with many dangers and hardships, but it gives meaning to life, and there are many rich rewards to be found along the way. It means asking the questions that are hard to answer. Questions like, where am I going? Why am I going there? What is it that I really want? And why do I want it? Am I making the best possible use of myself as a person? Am I gradually realizing my real potential? Am I discovering my best talents and abilities and using them to their fullest? Am I living fully extended in my one chance at life on earth? Am I really living? Who am I? These are the questions everyone must ask himself and find the answers to. As Emerson wrote, though we travel the world over to find the beautiful, we must carry it with us, or we find it not. Whatever it is you're looking for must first be found within yourself, whether it be peace, happiness, riches, or great accomplishments. Everything we do outwardly is only an expression of what we are inwardly. To ask for anything else is as absurd as looking for apples on an oak tree. So the person who knows what he wants knows what he must become, and so he fixes his attention on the preparation and development of himself. And as he grows toward the ideal he holds in his mind, he finds interest, zest, and joy on the journey. He looks forward to tomorrow, but he also enjoys today, for it's the tomorrow he looked forward to yesterday. He knows that if he cannot find meaning and value in his present, it will very likely be missing from his future. Today is the future of 5 years ago. These are questions that need answering. Some 4,500 years ago, one of the most inspiring thoughts the world's ever produced was written in Sanskrit, and here's its translation. It goes, "Look well to this one day, for it and it alone is life. In the brief course of this one day lie all the verities and realities of your existence, the pride of growth, the glory of action, the splendor of beauty. Yesterday is only a dream, and tomorrow is but a vision. Yet each day, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and each tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this one day, for it and it alone is life." With that one bit of ancient philosophy and little else, a person could live an ideal and richly successful life. It applies to everyone in every walk of life, certainly the student, the teacher, the business person, the worker, whatever his task may be, the housewife, the politician, the clergyman. I remember reading somewhere about a businessman who visits his barber shop every morning for half an hour. He doesn't want to shave or haircut every morning. He lies stretched out in the chair with a hot towel on his face, not just because it's soothing and relaxing, but so no one will recognize and speak to him. And during that half hour, he gets himself organized mentally for the day ahead. Sounds like a good idea, but I think everyone could accomplish much the same thing by sitting quietly and slowly reading that great piece of wisdom from the Sanskrit. Look well to this one day, for it and it alone is life. It's true. Today, right now, it's all the life there is for any person on earth. We can look toward and plan for the future, certainly, but if we pass up living and enjoying today, we're passing up all we've got for something we hope to get. In the brief course of this one day lie all the verities and realities of your existence, the pride of growth, the glory of action, the splendor of beauty. In reading and thinking of this at the beginning of each new day, we could remind ourselves of these points. The truth and reality of our lives, in themselves a miracle. And we would remind ourselves of the duty to grow a little as persons, to rise above the petty and the trivial, to become stronger and more serene. And we would remind ourselves to take some action calculated to move us a notch closer to our goals and toward fulfillment as persons, and to recognize and be aware of the beauty around us. The proof of the greatness and truth of this piece of writing is in the fact that it successfully withstood the test of time and has endured for more than 4,000 years. It's as modern and important today as it was the day it first flashed across the mind of some person whose name has long been forgotten. And it'll be just as important to thinking men and women 4,000 years from today. For real truth is as ageless as the mountains, as enduring as the sea.